Moving on to item 4 and 5, election of the chair and vice chair. Appointment of election assistants. For the purposes of administering the election process this evening, I will be appointing 2 election assistants. Our election assistants this evening will be Joanna Morrison, board coordinator, and Emily Gala, general manager of various board services. For the election of the chair. Before we begin the election process, I'd like to take a moment to review the responsibilities of the chair. The main role and responsibilities are as follows: to attend agenda planning meetings in collaboration with the director designate, to call the SEAC meeting to order, having established the quorum is present, and preside over the meeting, ensure that governance procedures such as motions are procedurally followed. This is provided through the speaking notes. To make determinations through the chair ruling on in-meeting matters, facilitate and encourage members to participate in discussion and ensure that respectful and constructive communication is maintained between members, make decisions regarding delegation requests, act as a liaison between the staff and the membership, stay connected to and answer questions from the membership, and in absence of the chair, the vice chair takes on these duties. I'd now like to review the rules with respect to elections. An individual SEAC member may self-nominate or be nominated by another SEAC member. Each nomination requires a mover. Upon nomination, I will confirm the interests of the nominees for the position. Once all nominations have been made, I will ask for a motion to close the nominations. I will ask the election assistants to distribute ballots. I will remind the members of the names of the nominees prior to voting. For members participating remotely, they must email their vote directly to Joanna Morrison, the senior board coordinator. Paper ballots will have the names of all SEAC members. Please note your selection from those who were nominated or self-nominated. Only the voting members from SEAC may participate in the voting exercise, which will be tabulated by the election assistants and returned to me, and I will announce the results. I would also like to remind you that to be elected, a candidate must receive a majority of valid votes cast. Each voting member of the committee shall have 1 vote. If no candidate receives a clear majority, then a second ballot will be held. If no candidate receives a clear majority on the second ballot, the name of the person receiving the fewest votes shall be dropped from the ballot, and the member shall vote again on the remaining candidates. This continues until 1 candidate receives a majority vote. Where it is necessary to break a tie vote, a second ballot shall be held between or amongst the candidates involved in the tie. And if a vote to break a tie results in a tie again, the candidates involved shall draw cards to determine the results, using the bridge convention to determine ranking of cards. Ace is high with a card suit in the following order of priority: spade, heart, diamond, and club. Following that, at the discretion of the newly elected chair, there may be a short recess called in order to acquaint the chair with their responsibilities. Are there any questions before we begin? With that, I would now like to open the floor for nominations for the office of the chair. Can I acknowledge a mover? Kathy?
I nominate,
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
I nominate Steve for chair.
Do you accept the nomination? Are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, then I would ask for a motion to close the nomination for office of the chair.
Sure.
Moved by Kathy, that nominations are the office of the chair are closed. All those in favor? All those opposed? All right. So, with only one nominee, I'm very pleased to announce that Chair of SEAC for 25-26 is Sue Cowan. I would now like to call the election assistants out to distribute for Vice Chair. Do I have, do I have any nominations for vice chair?
I nominate Kathy.
Do you accept the nomination? Are there any other nominations? Great. Can I have a mover to close the nominations? Sue? All those in favor? Any opposed? Great. I'm very pleased to announce that vice chair for the 25-26 will be Kathy Niedermeyer. Okay, so as the new chair, Sue, you can take over the chair role. Would you like a 5-minute break, or are you ready to carry on? Perfect.
I think I'll just.
Okay.
No, we'll just switch.
Okay. She's so different.
Okay, and I'll pass the chair over to you, Sue. Number 6.
All right, so next order of business is delegations. I would like to call upon Jessica Robinson. She's online, okay, so I cannot. Jessica, you've got 4 minutes.
Great, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today on this important topic. I want to take the opportunity to thank the wonderful organizations around the table as well for all the work you do to improve the accessibility of education for students with exceptionalities in Ontario. This work is so important. My name is Jessica Robinson, and I am a mother of 3 children, 6 and under, living in central Ottawa. My eldest son is extremely bright, curious, and creative. He is a wonderful big brother and friend and has many special interests. This past summer, following 4 years of advocacy and countless appointments to understand the root cause of his sensory-seeking behavior and emotional dysregulation, a private psychological educational assessment revealed a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. On October 20th, the OCDSB initiated a pause for safety following an incident in which my 6-year-old child was seeking vestibular sensory input by spinning in his educator's chair and was denied access, leading to an episode of dysregulation in which he became physically aggressive with his educator. It is important to note that accommodations were strongly advocated for by my partner and I prior to this exclusion, including at the IEP-IPRC meeting, which took place only 2 days prior to the exclusionary event. These supports were systematically denied by board staff who stated that my son did not meet the criteria for more substantial accommodations. I would like to highlight this as in section 9.1.3 of the Policy on Accessible Education for Students with Disabilities, it states that where an education provider excludes a student from school for disability-related behavior because of an alleged safety issue, without putting in place all reasonable accommodations up to the point at which it would cause undue hardship, this will raise human rights concerns. In my opinion, the denial of accommodations immediately prior to this exclusion raises significant human rights concerns, and I would welcome the committee's opinion on this matter. A case conference was scheduled on October 24th, which was attended by more than 12 individuals from the OCDSB. We were fortunate to have the unwavering support of my child's clinical psychologist who completed his psychoeducational report at this table as well. A partial day gradual return was proposed at this meeting, which my son's clinical psychologist immediately expressed would not be suitable for my son, given his need for predictability and routine consistent with his neurodevelopmental profile. My partner and I echoed clearly the concerns of this clinical psychologist and did not agree to the partial pause. Despite being a collaborative table, the opinion of my son's medical team and us as parents was systematically ignored by the board, who moved forward with initiating a partial pause. This partial pause was subsequently appealed by my partner and I, accompanied by 4 letters of support for immediate full-day reinstatement of Owen's access to education from members of his medical team, including his geopsychiatrist, occupational therapist, clinical psychologist, and child therapist. We were informed that this appeal would be heard by a panel of trustees, who I have subsequently learned are not currently employed by the OCDSB. Despite being in receipt of this appeal and medical opinions, my child continued to be excluded for an additional 2 weeks, totaling 11 school days. Throughout this grueling process, my partner and I noted significant procedural inefficiencies and lack of communication and coordination across the OCDSB and between OCDSB staff and our family, which cost precious time, all while actively being denied access to the classroom. On November 5th, the OCDSB ultimately decided to accept the advice of my child's medical professionals and allow my child back to school full days. The impact this experience had on my child and our whole family cannot be overstated. My husband and I were unable to work for over 2 weeks while we stayed home to support our child, who was in a state of acute emotional distress following an abrupt pause in his routine. My child missed out on seeing his friends at school over Halloween and showing them his costume, which he was particularly devastated by. I would like to humbly suggest that the OCDSB conduct a lessons learned exercise regarding this case, and that policies, processes, and service standards for communication during exclusion involving a disabled student be reviewed to ensure that no child with a disability or their families has to be subjected to such an experience in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. Okay, so we can have up to 3 committee members ask questions of clarification. Are there any questions for? Okay, Jess?
Thanks, Jessica, for sharing that, and I'm so sorry for your family in terms of what you experienced. We've heard similar stories across the province and beyond, and it's really brave of you to speak publicly about it, which I'm sure is really challenging for you. I wondered if you could speak a little bit about the kinds of accommodations that you saw being put in place, or that you noted were not being put in place, or I wonder if you could speak a little bit to the accommodation piece in terms of what was offered then and maybe now at the school.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much for that question. So the accommodations which I began requesting prior to the start of the school year were those outlined in my child's psychological educational report, which had been prepared by the clinical psychologist in the summer prior to the start of grade 1. This outlined specific sensory strategies which could be implemented, as well as individualized support. So the psychologist noted, and we as parents have noted, that there are very subtle cues which occur prior to episodes of dysregulation. However, we fully acknowledge that an educator who is also responsible for 20 other students in the classroom would not be in a position to pick up on these cues. So we were looking for individualized educational assistance support to be able to pick up on those cues and assist my child with resetting early while he works on developing these skills. I should also note that we clearly expressed to the school in sharing that psychological educational report as well that we had been piloting medications. We're currently on medication number 7 in collaboration with my child's psychiatrist to address this. So we advocated strongly for individual EA support while we piloted those medications early on in the school year, noting that there may be side effects and things may get worse before they get better. But to be clear, the school did offer body breaks, visual schedules, kind of low-hanging fruit that would have been more easy to implement. But what I was looking for and very clearly asked for, both verbally and in writing numerous times prior to the beginning of the school year and throughout the month of September, was individualized educational assistance support for my child.
And what's the status now? Is some of that being provided, or how is that return working out in that way?
So currently my child has what is called emergency educational assistance support, or EEA. This is approved on a 10-day basis. There has been a different adult supporting my child almost every single day that I come to the school. I drop him off frequently following ABA appointments and therapy appointments. So while the EEA support is appreciated, it unfortunately does not inspire the sense of predictability and stability that I would like longer term. It also introduces change for my child every day, and he is the type of child consistent with his neurodevelopmental profile who enjoys that stability and that routine. He also performs repertoire with adults and has preferred adults, so to have that constantly changing is continuing to create challenges but he does currently have EEA support and has had EEA support since he returned to school full days on November 6th.
Okay.
Thanks, Jessica.
So we can take one more question. Anybody have? All right, oh, Anthony?
You mentioned you tried requesting or it was recommended to I think appeal or something like that to the trustees, and that wasn't available. Was there alternative in the new, given that the board is made up now of a supervisor? Were you given that option, or have you tried contacting the supervisor, and have you had a response in that view?
Jessica, just before you answer, I want to let you know that you have 1 minute to answer. Okay, thank you.
Certainly. Thank you for that excellent question. It was told to me by the superintendent in charge of my area that the trustees would review the appeal. I, at the time, was not aware, actually, that the OCDSB was under supervision and did not have trustees. It's unclear to me how this appeal was going to be heard or what was being done during those 11 days that my child was out of school and we were waiting for trustees to hear the case. I only became aware of supervision after speaking with my MP's office. So no alternatives were offered. I did not ask for alternatives, not being aware of the intricacies and the current status of the OCDSB's organizational structure. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessica. We're going to move on. We're going to do review of the Special Education Advisory Committee minutes. I now call for a mover to approve the minutes of the November 5th, 2025 meeting. I'll move it. Okay. And you can get your hand down there. I have trouble moving my head, so you gotta put your hand up like good and high for me, like stretch. All right. All right, so. All right, so all in favor of accepting minutes? All right, that passes. Thank you. Okay, so item 7.2 for an agenda. It has been provided for information purposes. Are there any additions or changes? Okay. All right. Discussion. Yeah. Oh, okay. All right, so I called on Abraham Stout and General Manager Bala to introduce the discussion from theory to practice, the work of SEAC.
Thank you so much. So this evening, we decided to take the opportunity to build upon our meeting, the presentation from General Counsel Mark last meeting around the governance and the work of SEAC, and bring forward to you a policy that requires some revision and spend some work together this evening, moving from the theoretical part of that discussion last month into some practice and how we can, how this committee can help staff to look through, in this situation, the home instruction policy. So we will go through what the policy currently looks like. Emily will share some of those pieces for you. And then we will, we have provided some discussion questions, things that we're thinking about in terms of improvement to the policy. And this is really your opportunity to kind of think about how to help set direction for the district through the policy work that Jesse outlined for us last month. So while there are some strong, perhaps, feelings, or feelings is not the right word, but there's a strong notion that we sometimes slip into the how of the work. I really encourage you, and I will do the same for myself, to be thinking about the what and why of the work, as this helps us to kind of land in, the next slide, land in the mandate of SEAC. And so just remind you, this is from Jesse's slides last month around what the core mandates for SEAC are. And so this, I think, falls under that mandate of making recommendations to the board regarding special education. And so with that, we'll head into, and I use this, I liked this slide because it had that noses in, fingers out quote, and I think that that is helpful in kind of landing what we're gonna try to do together this evening in terms of focusing on kind of the what and the why of the policy work for SEAC. So I'll pass it over to Emily to review some of the key pieces of this policy as it stands right now.
Thanks so much. So the home instruction policy was issued in November 1998. So it is long overdue in terms of looking at this again, as well as the procedure. The procedure, however, was updated in 2006. So the objective of this is to provide home instruction to students who meet two eligibility criteria. And that would be that there's medical evidence to indicate that the pupil cannot attend school. And that is provided to the principal, and that the principal is satisfied that home instruction is required. This is guided by Regulation 298 of the Education Act, and it is not the same as homeschooling. So when we think about homeschooling, that's when the parents or guardians are primary instructors, whereas this is provided by an educator. So under the Education Act, a principal can recommend home instruction if approved by the appropriate supervisory officer, and so these come through Learning Support Services Department. The board supports the provision of home instruction subject to available resources, and for eligible students, they can receive up to 5 hours a week of home instruction. And so it's up to the superintendent and the school principal to implement the procedure. So that is the policy. That is as much as we have in our current policy. So if you go to the next slide, please, Heather. We did put together some discussion questions because certainly as we currently work through the policy as well as the procedure, we really want an opportunity to engage in these conversations, to hear your thoughts on it. We are looking to have a more fulsome policy. I think we have some ideas of some things that we would like to bring into this. So that they can be included moving forward. So the questions that we've created kind of capture some of that thinking. So as you work through them, staff are here to support you, to provide some information as needed. We will listen to your feedback and certainly take that back as we revise and bring this forward to senior staff for review and approval. So I'm going to give you a moment just to kind of look through some of the questions. And really up to you, if there's a particular place you want to start, we can certainly open up the floor for conversation. Of course.
So home instruction,
Yes,
it's only 5 hours a week.
that's right.
Okay, that seems really, you're not gonna get a lot of hours sort of thing, even though it is one-on-one. My other question though is, so home instruction, but can it be done in, is it just home instruction, or it could be, like if the child is hospitalized?
So if a child isn't hospitalized, then that is provided through, that's not through home instruction, through
Okay.
the OCDSB.
Okay.
So this is just a child that would be at home, it could be for medical reasons, however, they're going to the hospital for treatment, and then the teacher would meet them in the home.
Okay.
Is it meant to be temporary?
Yes, it is a short term.
Okay.
So at this point, it is 5 hours a week for up to 6 months.
Oh,
On a case-by-case basis, can it be extended past the 6 months?
So at this time, it is 6 months. However, we do have students that apply the following year.
So you can
So
reapply.
these are things that we're looking at in terms of can we extend and what the length should be.
I just want, like, I prepared something like, in the context, like, I'll just read it out, in the context of all. The current policy comes from a time when home visits were the only option, and where it appears to be the only option, where it doesn't speak to the complex medical situation schools see today. Students who are immunocompromised, undergoing long-term treatment, living with severe episodic conditions, or facing mental health barriers that make in-person attendance unsafe or impossible for extended periods. In practice, everything starts with credible medical documentation confirming that attendance isn't feasible. Only then can school design a plan that actually fits the student's reality. COVID showed that hybrid and virtual models can keep these students connected when the building isn't an option. And some families face circumstances that old policy never anticipated. A modern update needs to recognize these harder cases and often flexible ways for students to stay engaged with the classes and learning, even when safe return to the building isn't immediately possible.
Just to remind everybody, I do have a speakers list, so please wait till I call you to speak.
Sorry.
That's okay. You're excited, I get it. Okay. Jess?
Did you have
Sorry.
a slide?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Go ahead. So did you have some
Sure.
specific?
Were you done, Anthony?
Well,
You wanna
yeah,
start
it's,
off?
and
Yeah.
and it's just like and also like that mention about like the 5 hours a week, it is quite limited, and that maybe consideration for a ministerial level, like maybe that sometimes because in this context of it, maybe exceptions be made for more than 5 hours if it's really needed. But that I think this is from an administrator's perspective, 5 is. It's quite challenging already giving 5 across the board, but there might be needs because as I mentioned, those like 4 categories or more, that there sometimes are needs. There's like already immunocompromised, for example, that often quite requires more than 5 hours, for example, or other categories. It's you by on the ground seeing the examples, you come face to face with the cases that are being presented.
So you said the 4 categories. Could you just list them again for us, what you suggested?
Immunocompromised, undergoing long-term treatment, those living with severe episodic conditions, and then facing mental health barriers that make in-person attendance unsafe.
Okay, Jess?
I wonder if I could just hear a bit more about the current status of the use of this policy, if it's being used, for 5 kids, for hundreds of kids, and what kind of typical profile might be of kids who are receiving home instruction right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I would say on average, there's about maybe 10 students per year that are put forward for home instruction. Not all of those, however, do end up receiving home instruction, and that's for a number of reasons. Sometimes it is they are too unwell, have too many appointments, and so they decide not to pursue it. Other times it can be difficulties finding an instructor. So those are some of those challenges. I would say many of the students who are approved at this time are going through cancer treatments, as an example. So again, significant medical needs. Now again, as I said, it's 5 hours a week, up to 6 months is and we do ask for that medical certificate that indicates kind of what the need is and what the length of time they anticipate that to be for. Did I answer all of your questions? I just want to make sure I didn't.
That's really helpful, Emily. I was just making sure that it wasn't a place where kids for whom we can't provide sufficient medical supports within schools, that this would be an option. It sounds like that's not how it's being used right now, and that it's being used with a tiny number of kiddos who don't have a range of options available to them. So that's really helpful for me. Thank you.
My question sort of, is there, because there's, in the policy itself, it says like, it can be approved, it might not be. Is there any sort of thought about like, an appeal process or, because if parents are rejected out of this, what are their options, and then like sort of what is reasonable, what's not reasonable, like that type of thing, I think would be really helpful to sort of have a bit more details, even though you're trying to keep they're open, but, it's hard for parents to know what the rules are and, or if it's valid that they're being rejected or not, type thing, like, you know, I guess you might get a different answer for one principal to another, things like that. I guess my other question was, is the 5%, does it have to be in person, or could they do virtual or things like that? Because I think like technology's changed a lot since 1998, and that might make it easier, for example, for staff to be able to support a student if they don't have to actually drive to the student's house and deal with some of those options.
So at this time, it is in person in the home, so, but again, with all those notes, this is really important feedback for us to gather.
Just to add to that, because virtual for a student that is immunocompromised is such a better option, like, just.
Or at least as a, like, and I mean, I think the student should have some choice, or, you know, that should be a discussion, like, you know, what works best for you, and, you know, because maybe they do need that personal interaction, and that's key for, you know, like, especially if they're isolated, and that might be their one thing that they get. But I think it, you know, it'd be good to have options and flexibility into the policy.
Like understanding, of course, that, you know, if a child has medical needs, they're not gonna be able to do the full normal week of school. But if it's only 5 hours a week, I guess I'm thinking in terms of if it's difficult to staff, if somebody had a job where there were more hours, it might be easier to staff if it wasn't just 5 hours, because if it's during the school day, you know, like perhaps if there were a number of these kids and someone could actually make a job out of that type of support, as opposed to just having such a reduced schedule, that might help to get qualified people.
My last question, is regarding the age. So the approximately 10 students a year that do access this, is there, like, what's the age range? Like, do we, you know, grade 1 to 12, or?
Yeah, so currently it's mandated school age, so 6 to 18. But I will say that we have made exceptions before for students if they have special education needs and they're over 18 and they need that in-person support for various reasons, and we do consider that. But right now it's mandated school age.
Allison?
I was just wondering, especially because it sounds like resources are often very limited, and I understand that it's a very small group of kids. I'm just wondering if anyone had ever thought about, sorry, my 10-year-old's just gonna ask, can you just wait a second? If there had ever been any consideration to do kind of small group, and this would obviously be virtual or online capacity, but if, for example, you had a couple of learners that were at a similar learning stage, perhaps you could get more bang for your buck by having small group learning, say 2 or 3 kids together online with a teacher. That could also give a social kind of component. Possibly it could be voluntary, so a kid could, you know, opt into that small group if it was available. But I just wonder if possibly, yeah, you could support more students if that was an option.
I guess another would be, if there's thought to reaching out to some of the families that have been through this program and asking them for feedback or for input, because, you know, they lived it versus us that we're just, and it might be useful to, you know, interview them or, you know, ask them like what worked, what didn't, or, and if there's families that were rejected out of this, I think that they might be interesting to talk to as well, as to, you know, what, if they were denied access to this, then where did they go and what did they do? Because, you know.
That was actually my last question, so what happens with students that are rejected for this?
Yeah, I will be transparent, we haven't had anyone rejected this
Okay.
year, to be
No.
honest. Like typically when the medical documentation comes forward, it's significant. So I wouldn't say we have many that are coming forward. As I said, on average it's about 10 and there's pretty significant needs. So, but I think these are all important pieces to consider moving forward.
As it stands right now, it's pretty clear cut.
Mhm.
Who would be eligible?
Yeah.
And there's two things. One is about in the context of this and being able to mix in, because this is very like the way the policy is from the old days. It's almost like clear cut. It's you have 5 hours and that, and you don't even get to participate in school anymore. And what about like being able to get the 5 hours instruction and still be able to participate in the school system in a hybrid manner in your somehow, whether it be virtually, like this is what we've learned from COVID, still be able to participate and still get your 5 hours of instruction in some way for whatever reason, because of the complex layers of this, the child has a specific profile that would allow them still to be able to participate in some way virtually, for example, and still require that 5 hours of instruction for whatever the reason it is in the complexity, and still grow from it or be able to eventually return to school if that was the case. Second, I've come across parents with their kids, they have profiles where, again, it's an issue of communication, where children are not even going to a school board because they're, and this is like, for example, classic cases, autism, frequently enough. Their kids are just so unable to participate in a regular school environment because of sensorial issues. They don't even bother registering the kids in the school board. So they need home instruction, and they're able to learn. They're possibly quite gifted children. It's just that they have such sensorial issues, they can't participate. And so it's about communicating to them that they have options, that they might be able to get home instruction that's even available to them. So they're not even necessarily, they don't know that they have options, or they're afraid. They're afraid of being rejected, or they've had bad experiences, and they just don't even know that they might have an option to be able to have their child. They're on their own basically, and so that there's an issue of communication there, that and having the support of the school board and the ministry really behind them, that their kids can grow and not be on their own like that. And I think that's really important, if they're to have those basic child rights.
I think you spoke about a couple of things, Anthony. I think one of the things you're alluding to is that transition plan. That was at the beginning of your conversation, you really alluded to that transition plan, and that is one of those things that we're considering. Would it be helpful to have a formal transition plan as students are coming out of home instruction, because we do want them to be in their community school as much as possible, right? So how can we work to kind of formalize something around that? And then I also heard you talk about just like the eligibility criteria, it sounds like is what you were speaking to as well. Okay, thanks for that.
Any more questions?
Just looking at number 7, you have is a lifetime maximum for eligible students, and I think my personal view would be I hope not. Like if I think of a kid that say has cancer in grade 2 and then goes into remission, but then it returns in their grade 10, like that to me seems like it would be a shame to be like, oh, you've already used up your allocated time. Like, I mean, these are from the small numbers. These are presumably relatively serious cases that I would hope that they should get whatever they can. So.
Thanks for that. So we wanted to provide kind of some context around the discussion to help you be thinking about kind of how you might approach another policy conversation here. This is helpful for us in our next step. So just to give you kind of now the context. So Emily and I go back and we continue to work with the policy analysts around taking these suggestions along with some of our own thoughts to try to create a revision to this particular policy. When we think we are at the right spot, there's opportunity for me to highlight the consultation that has taken place, which will include this here with SEAC. And we bring it forward to the senior staff table for review and discussion there as well, and before it goes on for final approval. So that's kind of the process. Appreciate your contributions and thoughts this evening. You have one last thought, Anthony?
I have more. I thought we didn't get to the questions yet.
Oh, sorry, we decided to kind of open that up. So if you have some other thoughts, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Sorry about that.
That's
Okay. For the questions like qualifying reasons, I prepared like a bit of categories. One is medical and disability related barriers, acute care and recovery, chronic or episodic conditions, severe mental health conditions, infection risk. And then for non-qualifying circumstances, I could go into more detail. I could send you earlier for that qualifying reasons, more like context. Non-qualifying circumstances, situations not supported by clinical evidence, and where the student can safely attend with normal accommodations. Parent preference, transportation inconvenience, schedule conflicts, or dissatisfaction with programming. And then this, I'm a bit concerned about. In terms of attempts to use home instruction or as a permanent substitute for homeschooling or withdrawal from the system, but not where the students must never be denied home instruction when a regulated clinician identifies a legitimate health-based barrier. And then in terms of minimum required medical documentation, my thoughts were, there's two ways to look at it. There's, if it's considered a medical, like a right per se for the student, then my thoughts are, I don't know what around the table, but it's a medical note, just a simple medical note, because would be adequate. But if it's more of like a privilege, then it's kind of, well, sort of like half and half, like then a confirmation the student, a functional statement explaining why the student cannot safely attend school. So where does this lie? Is it a full right? Then like, is it then like a simple that doesn't go into the privacy like of the student? So it's a question of how do you define this accommodation? Is it where does this in terms of the students' rights to this service? And then also in terms of medical confirmation, the student was personally assessed, expected duration and any restrictions affecting instruction, whether partial attendance or hybrid options are medically appropriate. And then the usual like provider identity designation, licensed information and date and that kind of thing. But it doesn't go into sensitive diagnostic details because usually most accommodations don't usually require that level of detail. In terms of renewal frequency, yeah, you mentioned 6 months, but yeah, the thoughts that were in case if it's longer, that the medical note, if it mentions it's longer term, stable, or lifelong, that it be considered as needed,
Anthony?
Yeah.
Have you got, like, do you have a point for all of the questions? Because I
yes.
really appreciate the amount of work you've done in this,
Yeah.
but for the sake of time and expediency, so we don't
Yeah.
go past 9 o'clock.
Okay.
Can you email this to everybody, and that way we've got all of
Sure.
your notes, because these are
Sure.
really good ideas.
Okay.
And don't
Sure.
want to miss them, so.
Okay. Sure.
Awesome, thank you. All right, oh, okay, Jess, I think this will be maybe the last question on this, and then we'll move on. Does that make sense?
I just want to make sure that we're not considering this as like a placement option. I know that's not the goal of it and it's not the intention. I just get worried if I hear us going in the direction of providing this as an option to families as opposed to making efforts within the system to access the full instructional hours. So I know that that is, I understand the spirit of the policy and the intent of the policy, but I just want to make sure that was out there.
Thank you. All right, so we're gonna move on. Department updates. I now call on Superintendent Stout to provide reports.
Thank you. So thanks for being with us this evening. I'd like to acknowledge that today is International Day of Persons with Disability. And so the OCDSB joins communities and organizations around the world in celebrating the important contributions and leadership of persons with disabilities while striving to build a world that is more inclusive and accessible society for all. November 28th, last Friday, was Parent-Teacher Interview Day, and so this day is set aside, the 27th in the evening and the 28th in the morning is set aside for conversations with parents and educators about their child's progress thus far through the year. That being said, we encourage open communication between educators and families throughout the year, and we hope that that is happening for families. In addition, during that day, there was training provided for educational assistants. Topics such as neuro-affirming practices, de-escalation strategies, trauma-informed practices, social-emotional skills for students with autism and ADHD, understanding elopement, different communication strategies for teaching pre-verbal students with autism in the classroom, emotion validation, and many, many others were offered for educational assistants to participate in a virtual way. We had significant feedback that the topics were very well welcomed, and these topics are being offered to our secondary educational assistants in January. Just to highlight a few of the ongoing trainings that are happening throughout the district, we do have restorative practices training that is ongoing, as well as violent threat risk assessment training. We have launched the Coaching Boys into Men series, as well as there's a discussion group series with our administrators around inclusive practices happening. I'd like to share with you, I'd like to share with you the launch of a student newsletter on various mental health and well-being topics. It's called the Balance Bulletin. It's available on our website under the mental health webpage. It's a focus on practical steps to help look at mental health and well-being, supporting friends, and connecting with resources that are already ready to help students. Each issue explores a different theme that matters to students. The material is created by one of our secondary itinerant educational assistants and is reviewed by the Youth Action Committee on Mental Health. Last month's focused on healthy relationships with partners, friends, and family members. And this month's newsletter will focus on the importance of building healthy habits. These get emailed to students as well in the monthly updates. And as I said or mentioned, are posted on the website. Just a reminder that last month we did have a speaker series on navigating childhood grief. This was hosted in partnership with Chio, Roger Nielsen's house, and one of our OCDSB social workers. The link for that, if you missed it, there is a recording available on the website, and it was really helpful, I think, conversation around how to support children in navigating grief. Upcoming in January, we'll just highlight for you that kindergarten information nights are happening. We launch our kindergarten registration in January, and so if you know of people in your community and or have a young one yourself, please explore the local community school to gather as much information as you can about what kindergarten looks like, sounds like, feels like in the OCDSB. And I think probably some of you would have heard that today the EQAO results were released by the ministry, and so board staff have been reviewing those results, and we look forward to getting deeper into that data to help guide our school priority learning plans and really help us understand the learners and where they're at in our system and how we can help them to reach that provincial standard. Lastly, the winter break is upcoming, starts on December 22nd and heads through January 2nd inclusive. Kids return to school on January 5th. And with that, that's all I have for the superintendent's update.
Are there any questions? We're gonna move on to item 9.2, the special education plan standards. I now call upon Principal System 9 to present the standard for the OCDSB model for special education.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. This evening, we're going to be looking at two standards. I'm doing the one on the model. The purpose of this standard is to share with the Ministry of Education and the public the board's philosophy and our service delivery model for special education programs and services. As a board, we are committed to early identification. We are committed to following the legislation, the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, the Ontario Human Rights Code, the Education Act, and the Accessibility for Ontarians and Disabilities Act. All of these are entrenched in our special education model and explicitly outlined in our special education plan. Our approach is also aligned with our board's mission statement and strategic plan, which form the foundation of our work in special education. And this focuses on human rights, equity and inclusion, and removing systemic and structural barriers. So our model starts with inclusion as our principle. It's all students deserve equal access to opportunities and resources to succeed. We have our service delivery model is entrenched in the universal design for learning, culturally relevant and responsive pedagogy, and the tiered approach to intervention, which is outlined in Learning for All, a ministry document. When we're looking at inclusion, we're looking at the continuum of programs and placements in our board. So we work from the regular classroom to be the most inclusive place, and then we move on to some specialized program placements, and those specialized program classes are outlined in this standard. In order to support our students with special education needs in our board, we rely on the individual education plan to provide us with the accommodations and the modifications to support student learning. We're looking at a tiered approach to support students, tier 1 being classroom, tier 2 being school-based, tier 3 bringing in some of the multi-D team and some professionals in to help support. We're looking at school-based supports that include special teachers, LST, LRT, EAs, principals and vice principals. And as we have talked about before, the multidisciplinary team, which I just talked about, include LSCs, professional staff, psychologists, social workers, speech and language pathologists, and then the itinerant teachers that also form part of the multi-D. This is all outlined in this standard, and if there are any comments, welcome to take that feedback here, or as I stated before, you're welcome to send me an email with some of your comments as we look to update the standard for this current school year.
Are there any questions?
In general, the model's pretty like it's a well-established model that's presented over the years. The philosophy, strong values, well-defined range of supports and students. My concern is that it doesn't cover the aspect of accountability and measurements. There's no built-in way to track how effective the model is across the system and how SEAC can monitor the progress over time. So that we know how it's working. We need to close the gap and maybe add 2 layers, to consider 2 layers of high level, maybe perhaps key performance indicators, one at the system level for overall insight. Like we do that already, like in the past with the trustees at the committee of the whole for in terms of 6 KPIs at that level that were presented quite often through metrics like math or that being an example, but various different metrics of performance, how we're doing. But in particular for special needs, it's piecemeal. We've been here at the table here at SEAC. We've had sort of KPIs, performance indicators that are presented, but it's not like the whole for this model. We've had bits here and there, but nothing holistic, and that covers the whole model. And that perhaps something that could be worked on, that identifying KPIs across that cover every aspect of the model that relates to special needs. So, and then presenting as an integrated model where all the KPIs fit in, and showing that, okay, we which ones are like all the critical ones, and not just that, but also the key success factors at the end of the day for these key KPIs, what really makes a difference, and maybe color coding them so that we know what's red, green, and orange, amber, or so, or other color coding systems, so that way we know how we're really doing, and as SEAC, what we need to be working on. If something that, where are the greens, and then where are we not? What do we define as SEACs as not being good? So that we can work on at the table for meetings, or even if necessary, define subcommittees to work on something that's really not doing that well, and putting more time in. What really makes it successful or not, and so that we can make a difference here at the table. And things that, whether it be at the staff level or the board level or the ministry level, that we work on in terms of policy and governance and making recommendations. So, and that's, I think that would be really helpful.
Are there any other questions?
Also, this might be slightly off a bit, but it's still relevant. I believe there was the limit, like relative to this model, the specialized class program classes. There was a motion of that we last winter in terms of the elementary program review, the 39. The motion by SEAC to not have the 39 and eventually there's 26 specialized program classes to not be closed down as part of the elementary program review, and then the trustees ratified that by not having that closed as part of the EPR. Now, I was wondering, given that the elementary program review is no longer there, would there be a possible confirmation from the supervisor that this is still the case, that those program, given that that's something important to the SEAC, that those specialized program classes are still being are safe, basically?
Sure, I know that Mr. Plandon is online. I don't know if you have a comment. I guess what I would offer just in advance is that at this time, what was in motion and decided by the board about elementary program review is still the case. Obviously, we now know the elementary program review is not going forward even in the parts that have been approved. And so when it comes to the conversation around specialized program classes, I think that's something that we potentially would continue to have a conversation about, but I think it was heard that staff heard from this table as well as from trustees that how that was presented at that time was not fulsome enough and not a plan that was looking to have moved forward at that time. So I'm not sure, I think Bob might have his hand up. It's hard to see for us. Go ahead, Bob.
You can hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks for the question. So the elementary program review that was passed by the trustees earlier in the year, as part of the consultation and the debate around that motion, there were other motions that related to special education. And those motions were not approved by the trustees. What the trustees approved was the elementary program review for implementation next year. The decision that I made as supervisor, and that was shared with parents in September, October, was that the elementary program review was not proceeding because the board was not, in my view, had a realistic implementation plan in place, that the elementary program review would proceed more gradually as planning and resources, were put in place, which I'm confident that we can do where it's practical to do so, and where parents were supportive in large measure, so that we reduce the number of programs to 2 streams from what we have today. The decision that was made did not rescind or alter in any way the budget and the investments that were put in place by trustees on the special education. So the motion that was on the table that they rejected, that decision endures under supervision. So there is no plan to change special education as a result of the I could say cancellation or deferral of elementary program review.
Jess?
Was there a follow-up question?
Go ahead if there is, yeah.
No, thank you.
One of the points that I wanted to bring forward maybe for a future agenda was popped up on there. So there's a line in the programs that describes the Education and Community Partnership Program, ECPP. And we've had some families asking us about the switch to, I like acronyms everywhere, the CPTEP, I guess, is for 2025, 2026, the care and treatment education programs, which I actually think might. I wondered if that could be sitting on the agenda in a future meeting, and also if we should continue to use the ECPP, got it right, to use the ECPP is still going to continue to be the name that we should refer to when we're speaking to families, not this care and treatment education program. We're just in a bit of confusion there. Does that make any sense, what I just said? All those
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jess. It does make sense, and appreciate your sorting through those acronyms, or the acronyms. Happy to bring that forward to forward agenda as an item for information.
Perfect, but it's fine that it's in the current documents as ECPP. We should just carry on with that. That's still correct in terms of the.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah,
that is
perfect.
correct.
Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to transportation, and now call upon General Manager Bala to present the standard for transportation.
Thank you. So the purpose of this standard is really to provide information regarding transportation policies. So we know that Ottawa Student Transportation Authority is responsible for the provision of transportation services for us. And through our service level agreement, then we look at eligibility standards when it comes to bell times and distance and accessible transportation for students with special education needs. You can see the accessible transportation, like OSTA has a number of policies that are written in the standard that kind of speak to those pieces, but our approach is that of inclusion just as it is in the regular classroom. So we are always looking at kind of least restrictive, independence-focused practices when it comes to transportation for students with special education needs. So if, however, more support is required, certainly this is determined through either medical certificate or through approval from the Learning Support Services Department. So we also go through approvals for solo transportation as another piece of that. And we know that students in our specialized classes do receive transportation without reference to distance if they're more than 800 meters from the school. So certainly we have expectations of schools in terms of developing transition plans. So again, wanting to help students develop those skills in order to move towards group transportation whenever possible. And any application related to transportation is reviewed annually. So that is outlined in this standard, and if you certainly have any questions related, please let me know.
Are there any questions? Anthony?
I'm assuming that it is quite close to perfection already, but at the same time, there is like perhaps a governance gap, like what's missing is not the standards themselves, it's lots of possibly required reporting back to the SEAC in terms of special needs. There's no mechanism in the OSTA to show the SEAC how well the standards are actually being met for students with disabilities. So without this, the SEAC cannot provide meaningful advice or identify trends. If it could be considered like maybe an annual desensitized report from the OSTA that summarizes like the service standards applied to students with special education needs, the quality and quantity of service delivered relative to those standards, trends, gaps, areas for improvement, satisfaction levels of families of students with special needs. And this would allow, like, you know, allows for SEAC to provide feedback and if needed, advice to improve things. Yeah, those little things, like just for continuous improvement of property system that's already doing quite well. But, yeah.
So we'll move on. I now call upon Superintendent Stout to introduce the memo 25060 SEAC vacancies.
Thank you. So in your package, you have a memo that outlines and informs the current membership of the Special Education Advisory Committee. At this time, the board's power to appoint members to SEAC is exercised by the Minister of Education. These membership terms are all expire on November 14th, 2026. The list of members is listed there for you and for your information.
Is there, something we need to go over?
No, it's just an information.
Okay, because,
There's a motion to accept.
okay, so where's the, okay. So motion to accept or amend? Is that what it is? Sorry. Okay,
Sorry, to receive it.
okay. So, can I get a mover for, that this be received? Kathy, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, great, that's passed, thank you. Okay, is there any new business this evening? Okay, that's fine. All right, so in the past, it has been practice to choose a volunteer from SEAC to attend other committee meetings. This year, that would be the Parent Involvement Committee, so PIC, and the Audit Committee. These are public meetings, and all are welcome to attend. Observers chosen from SEAC may wish to report to the committee on their observations and interesting matters that would relate to the work of the committee. Is there any interest in continuing this practice? And if so, can we raise it again at the next meeting? All right.
I think the question is if there is interest in continuing to have SEAC
Yeah.
representatives at PIC.
Okay.
So if there is interest, then we can bring it forward next meeting to
Okay.
determine who that may be.
All right. All right, so can I just get a show of hands for people if we're interested in continuing having somebody on picking the audit committee, and then we can discuss it next meeting?
Is there options of doing it virtually?
It depends on the meeting virtual. I
Yes.
don't know if pick and,
I think they're similar process to SEAC.
okay.
So So I think that they're similar to it as a SEAC member, you could request a hybrid link. That it is our pick and audit, are there virtual options for the audit members and pick members to?
Yes.
So it could be hybrid, so the same as.
Just, yeah, if you get details of
Yeah,
dates
we
or
get-
things like that, so that whoever can figure out if it's free.
Is there any other new business? Seeing no other new business, I will move on to the upcoming meeting date, which has been provided for information. The next SEAC meeting will be on Wednesday, January 7th, 2026. All right, so if there's nothing else, we're adjourned.
Wow.
45 minutes early. That's
What a
ever.
complete.
Recording stopped.
What's that?
How do I stop this? The new director of education said exactly
That's,
how. Unbelievable.
Last year, so that's this year's